Going to Natalie, you said I also would love to debate about subjects like the importance issues of Christianity. I'm not going to talk about that other one, being a traditional woman and shmushmorshin.
Oh.
So are you Christian?
Yes.
Okay.
What denomination?
Being,
Presbyterian.
okay. Being a traditional woman and shmushmorshin. So you're against shmushmorshin. Abortion. You're against it, or?
I'm sort of a middle ground here. Should I explain?
Yeah.
I think from like a religious standpoint, I have issues with it, but I also know that we live in a world where not everybody is religious, and we don't live in a perfect world, and there's a lot. I think since everyone's not under the religious belief, that they should be entitled to their own opinion, but I do think there should be way, 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 way more restrictions on shmushmorshmen.
Well, I don't understand, though. Let's back up.
Yeah.
Let's untangle some ideas again, right?
Yeah.
So idea one, from your Christian purview, abortion is murder?
It is.
That's kind of where I struggle.
From your Christian worldview?
Sure, yes.
Is it?
From a Christian standpoint
From
and what the
your
Bible
Christian
says?
standpoint.
Yes.
Yeah, from your Christian standpoint. It is
Yes.
murder?
Yes.
Okay. Then why the fuck would you make murder legal?
Because I know that everyone doesn't have the same views that I do.
Why would that matter? So now we're back to the idea of the serial killer again, remember? Remember earlier when we were saying that's subjective, so you can be a serial killer if you want to. Well, you can based on that view. You're actually enabling that view.
I think that it's just not realistic to say that. I don't think...
Is it your duty to be realistic? Is it your duty to be realistic? Is it your duty to say we're going to run the world based on just sheer pragmatism? That's not Christianity. That's something else, right?
No, I agree, but I think that I don't believe that day of conception, but that is life. You know.
Well, when is it?
Yeah, when is it?
This is where I struggle. This is why I am kind of. I think that there should be more restrictions in the fact that there's girls that I've heard from that have gone and gotten multiple abortions.
Ooh.
And which is not good for your body.
It's not long term.
Or the baby. And why I struggle to say that abortion shouldn't be legal is when it comes to like the woman, the mother's health perspective, which I know is a small majority.
That's an ectopic pregnancy. An ectopic pregnancy and abortion are two completely different things. An ectopic pregnancy is literally when the baby has grown outside of the uterus. That is a life-saving procedure.
Yep.
Those two are two completely different things.
No dispute there.
Literally, that's because an abortion, you don't want the baby. An ectopic pregnancy, you wanted that child, but the child just grew outside of you. So those aren't the same.
Yeah.
So when they say it's life-saving, it's not. You're literally killing a life.
Well, and the thing is even if we were to grant that it was, we're just going to grant it for the sake of argument that in this particular case, you have to choose between two lives. You're trying to make the best decision you can. Fine, we'll grant. In that case, the mother can always have more kids, but in this case, if you try to have that kid, it could kill them both, right? So we can just kind of grant that and say it's a wash, right? And just even allow those.
Yeah.
I still don't, since that's not even close to the representation of almost every abortion done on planet Earth.
Yeah.
I'm not really sure that bringing that up has any merit. So moving over to when life begins, when does it begin?
It begins at conception.
You got me trapped, I'm not gonna lie.
Because when people say, oh, it's just a fetus, literally go and Google the definition of fetus is baby. That's literally what it is.
Yeah, I know. I can
just
agree
is.
with that. Yeah.
I mean, I'm more so on the pro-life side, but when it does come to like, grape and incest,
that's
where I'm just like, eh.
Yeah.
But literally, if you go on Google, it's free. It's there. 99% of abortions are literally because women are being reckless. They make mistakes. The baby's an inconvenience. You chose the wrong dude. Literally, 1%, less than 1% is because of incest and rape.
Yeah.
In a perfect world, I would love to say that. Like,
I'm not willing to grant that though either.
That is.
So no, I'm not willing to grant that it would be okay under those circumstances.
Yeah,
so
that's where I'm.
Maybe I can clear this up for you, right? Let's do just like a kind of a basic logic exercise.
Okay.
If you, right, in this hypothetical, were horribly essayed,
Mm-hmm.
could you then go home and kill your son?
So I'm not speaking.
Hang on.
Okay. No.
Wait,
I
what?
want you to answer the question. Could you do that?
What do you mean?
How come?
Oh, wait, I don't understand.
How come
That's
this
mine.
this trauma which happened to you doesn't make it okay to kill your son?
Because that's mine. It's growing. My baby's growing in me.
Also-
That's part of
No. Your son is out of the
Oh,
womb.
out of me? Oh, that's because you can't murder your child. That's like a living, breathing.
And when do you think it's a child?
Literally right. Yeah, I know.
But he's also.
So then wait a second. So then how could you be for abortion even during SA?
I know
Are
what
you
you're
saying that the son is a product of?
No.
So then how is that connected? I don't understand.
Well,
Because that's when life starts.
because if you're
It's still
saying
alive.
this is a life and this is a life, if you're S8, are you allowed to take a life? The answer is no. So if you say life begins at conception, then this would mean directly after the SA, this is now a life, then you would have to explain that justification, and she knows that there's no possible way she can. And so for her to be consistent, she would actually have to say no, even during or even as a result of SA, you would not be able to abort. That's the only really consistent. I understand the feeling of it.
Sorry to comment.
You know.
So do you want children to grow up in loveless households or in the system? Because that's what is a result if, women get raped or incest. I mean,
Well, I think that a person who would end up a dominatrix probably grew up in a loveless household, but I don't want to abort you.
Shit.
that's your opinion.
I'm just saying, like, ultimately, no. I don't think that because you're poor, you have lesser value as a human being. I don't think because you're a woman or your race or anything like this, you have a lesser value as a human being. I think that human beings have an ontological value. And so I'm a Christian, and I've always believed that this is true. Even before I logically reconciled my beliefs in a God, I always knew that human beings intrinsically had value. I'm not ever going to say that because you're poor, you have no value.
But that's not what I'm getting at.
It is
I'm
what you're
saying-
getting at. They're of lesser value. How can
I
you
didn't-
say?
no.
Then, okay, well then,
I'm saying
why do you
a
want to
child
kill
would
them?
grow up in a loveless household if they're. I mean, I've read
So they have
plenty
lesser
of-
value, right? To
What did you say?
society?
No, I'm saying there's parents that are regretful and that don't want children. So
Mm-hmm.
you would want a kid to be raised in an environment like that?
But would you rather
but
be
why
dead?
do you? Hang on.
I mean, honestly, I wouldn't want to be raised in an environment.
You would
like
rather
that.
be dead than
I mean-
raised in a loveless household.
Okay, no, but I'm
No.
saying as a fetus,
As a fetus.
you don't have that obviously.
Well, hang on. I'm just going to engage with this the best
Okay.
way I can to kind of walk you through the logic here.
Not the logic.
Let us assume for a second that that you could read the mind of cows. Okay, that you could. A cow is born specifically for the purpose of being eaten. Now it's going to have a 3-year life cycle or 2-year life cycle till it gets as big as you can get it, and then you're going to humanely put it down. You're going to eat it. If you could ask these cows if they would rather exist for the 2 years or not exist for the 2 years, even knowing at the end of it they're going to get eaten, which do you think they would pick?
I don't think they would pick. Like, I just don't. I mean, I personally, like, if I knew that my parents didn't want me, I probably wouldn't want to be alive.
Then let's
But-
ask you. If you could live 20 years of your life,
Mm-hmm.
right, knowing that at the end of that 20 years, the lights would just go out, but you would get eaten by aliens, let's say, would you still choose to be alive if you had good quality of life?
No, I wouldn't want to subject myself to that.
You wouldn't.
No.
Okay, so then why is it you subject yourself to any suffering?
I mean, I think there's different levels of
I
suffering.
mean, you're a dominatrix.
You know what I mean?
You literally perform suffering on people
I'm
and think it's
saying-
hilarious and fun.
I mean, yeah, true. But I'm saying that in the context of a family, a kid that is growing up in an abusive environment by
they're
no fault
suffering.
of their own.
That's suffering, yeah.
Yeah, it is suffering, and for some people, they don't ever win that
Yeah,
battle.
for some
some
people that's
people
true.
are stronger.
But
Some
can you
peop-
agree with me that when it comes to trauma, if you're alive, you at least have a shot of moving past trauma?
Sure, you do, but there
And if you're
are
dead,
people that
you have no shot of moving past trauma.
that's fair. But I think growing up knowing that you are the product of rape or incest,
Mm-hmm.
that can't be a easy weight to bring around with you.
Yeah, but that's a trauma which can be surmounted. Death cannot be surmounted.
I don't think that's something that you.
in other words,
people
why,
live with it.
why would I want to embrace a doctrine of death instead of a doctrine of life. I want the doctrine of life. I want, even if it is so, that the conditions are not going to be optimal for a child who's born, I still think that we don't get to determine to kill them just because we think perhaps they might have a bad quality of life. People can move past suffering, but they can't do it dead.
I mean, I think people can move past suffering, but I think there are levels of suffering that you're going to have to just live with, but you're never going to heal from.
Maybe, but at least you're alive. And many people carry the scars of suffering that they never completely heal from. The death of a loved one, for instance, would be one such category of this. And isn't it still better to be alive with that scar than dead?
I just think the context is a little bit different when you're bringing in the fact that you are the product of incest or rape. Like, that's not a great feeling. And also you
Can a
have to deal
person, a
with, like,
product of incest and rape, go on to do amazing things?
sure they
Then
can.
why
I'm
do you
not
wanna
saying that
take-
they can't,
then
but I'm
all
just
I want
saying
is the potential.
but
All I want
that's-
is the potential. Even if it's horrible, I just want the potential of knowing that they can, to allow them to try.
Jivanik donated $200. There are thousands of people
Tons.
who were conceived through SA.
Tons.
Are they lesser than you?
They're not
Is your
lesser
worth
value.
based on how much your parents desired you?
No.
So I never said that I was better than anyone that was conceived through SA. I obviously know that that's not
You wanna
anyone's
kill 'em.
choice. I never said I wanted to kill them.
Well, I mean,
I'm
that's what
saying
you're
that there are
doing.
some people that can't live with that pain.
Yeah, here's the thing. The vast majority of them can, and humans are resilient. Humans go through horrific things, and they're able to move past those traumas. Knowing that that is true, that you've gone through suffering, that's horrible, and so is everybody at this table, and you're going to keep going through suffering. That's part of the human experience. It's still
That's
optimal.
preventable suffering.
Yeah, but you're still going to be suffering in your life, aren't you?
Yeah, you're still gonna feel bad.
You're going to suffer.
Yeah, but in a different way. I think that unfortunately, like, this is preventable. Like, you can't say that, like, me going through something like a death of a loved one is the same as those are two completely different traumas.
Have you
know
ever
what I mean?
heard this is an old quote? It's better to have loved and lost than to never have loved at all.
Yeah, I have heard that.
What is it? What do you think that means?
I mean, I think I take it for face value. It's better to.
Well, if you had never loved, you could never go through the suffering of losing love, which is one of the worst types of suffering. Losing a kid, losing a parent, losing a sibling, even losing the love of your life to another man or woman or whatever, right? It's still better and preferable, in other words, to go through the suffering of losing that than to have never positioned yourself to suffer at all. Do you agree?
I mean, that's fair. That is a fair statement. But I'm saying that I don't think you should subject an innocent child to that type of situation. And not even just like the sense of you were the product of rape or incest, but the fact that your parents, not all, but some parents resent that. And I've listened to this girl talk about regretful parenting, and she reads stories that people post on Reddit and whatnot, or just send to her individually, and they talk about how much they regret their children. And
Sure.
like, that's not fair.
Wait.
That's not fair
all
to
of
the
these-
children.
All of these people who exist currently, who are the product of SA, why aren't they unaliving themselves if their suffering is insurmountable?
Because they're not suicidal? I don't know.
Because their suffering's not insurmountable. Meaning they must have something that they're continuing to live towards and moving towards, right? That makes their suffering surmountable to that of life. Otherwise, they could and do always have the option of ending that, but they don't. And so it seems like it's powerful evidence that a person even conceived under those circumstances would still prefer to be alive than dead, because the people who have been aren't unaliving themselves.
I mean, I'm sure there are some that
Some,
are.
sure.
But
it can't be the vast majority, nor even close.
I mean, I understand your statement, but I still stand on how I feel about it, and I'm just saying.
-200 donated $200. Wilson, how do you reconcile your Christian opposition to abortion with the historical involvement of religious groups in wars that have resulted in the loss of many lives?
I don't see how those two things would need to be reconciled. So saying that you are essentially assassinating a child in the womb, because that's what I think you're doing from my perspective, though I understand that's politically charged language, is far different than fighting a war of opposition. Sometimes this is done defensively, sometimes offensively, but justifications for wars are completely different than justification of killing innocent children.
I mean, it's still unnecessary carnage, you know what I mean?
It's not always unnecessary. Sometimes it's necessary carnage. Necessary is a loaded word. You got to be careful with it, right? Like, it's not necessary for you to be a dommy mommy.
I mean,
right?
I wouldn't call myself a dommy mommy.
Yeah, but it's not necessary, right?
I mean, sure, it's not necessary.
It's not necessary. Necessary
No, it's
is
not out of necessity.
That's a very loaded. It's a very loaded word.
Okay,
So,
fair enough.
but
Loaded.
kind of backing up here, I would like to kind of challenge this just a little bit more before we move on. The idea of, if you and I can agree that most people conceived under the condition of SA are not unaliving themselves, then don't you think that they've been able to surmount the very suffering that you want to eliminate the potential of them even being able to face?
I mean, sure. Of course, there's going to be people out there that are able to move past their suffering and make something of it.
Yeah.
But I mean, I'm just saying in the sense of, if you can prevent any sort of suffering that doesn't need to be had, I mean, part of life, like, you're going to lose a loved one. That's inevitable. But this is something that can be avoided.
But I want you to think about the logical conclusion of this statement. Suffering can be avoided, right? And you're saying death is the ultimate way to avoid suffering. So then the extension of this would be, if you wanted to eliminate suffering in the entire world, what would you do?
Just kill everyone, right?
Does that make sense to you?
I mean, yeah, it does make sense to me.
Yeah, so you wouldn't want to do that, right? You wouldn't
No.
want- of course not. So when we kind of take this to its logical conclusion of, we want to make sure people can avoid suffering, well, you say we can do this by killing them. I agree. I guess that would avoid all future suffering. But the extension of that is, if suffering is the thing we're trying to avoid, why wouldn't we just do that with everybody?
I get that. No, but I mean, I think there's, certain types of suffering that do make you, like, quote unquote, stronger. I mean, you gotta appreciate.
Like most kinds.
Yeah, most kinds of suffering. Again, I just think that that's something that is, avoidable, and that's where I stand on that.
So I can't sway your mind even with logical argumentation? Like, is there anything I could do with logical argumentation that would sway your mind away from how you feel?
No.
No.
I feel the way I feel, and I've felt this way for a long time. So.
Do you think that feeling should trump logic?
I mean, what is logic? Like,
Logic would be the proper and reasoned way in which to ferret out a position which is coherent. So you can imagine that without that, nothing in this world would work, including how you get up. Like, you use logic daily and reasoning daily just to get through your day, right?
fair enough, yeah.
So, I mean, you don't want to trump that with emotion. Making an emotional argument would be counterintuitive, right? You can have all sorts of terrible results from just like, listen to my emotions. That would be, you don't want people to listen to your emotions, right?
I mean, I think emotions are valid.
Sure. Not saying they're invalid. I make tons of emotional decisions. If I pick a blue-colored truck versus a red-colored truck, that's probably an emotional decision. It's
Not
because,
logic.
Yeah, it's not because I'm getting any like extra performance out of the blue. I just emotionally like blue.
Actually, though, you could use logic for that because, like, I think they say red cars get pulled over the most.
Yeah, I'm just saying in this case, I'm not.
Yeah, I get
just
that.
like
No,
blue more.
Fair enough,
right?
fair enough.
But that doesn't really require a logical justification. Nobody's going to ask me to justify why I want a blue over a red truck, right? That's not really a big deal. So I'm willing to concede to you that I use emotions tons, right? But when it comes to a position of life, death, things like this, reason should probably trump emotion, shouldn't it?
I'll allow you each one final response
All right.
on this, and I have to move it on.
Yeah, move it along. I mean, I think we're gonna.
I just want to
We're
answer
gonna
that
keep
last
moving
question.
in circles. Repeat it.
I just want to know if you think ultimately, even knowing that I do think that emotion is valid, that doesn't mean that we should use it in lieu of reason, but we should usually use reason in lieu of emotion if we're making big decisions.
I mean, technically you're correct, but I think it stems a lot deeper when it comes to this subject.
Okay.